So welcome Melissa Good, she's editor at ARM.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for hanging around till the end of the afternoon. I only got here at lunchtime, but I've really enjoyed all the talks I've heard so far. This is my first time at the conference, and so the theme of the talk is the Acrolinx journey at ARM, and I'll just give you a tiny bit of my journey first. So I grew up in Mississippi. I went to New York to university, and then I became an IP lawyer in New York, and then moved to the UK, became a lexicographer and a journals editor at Cambridge University Press, where I looked after music journals, linguistics journals, things like that. And then in early 2016, I joined ARM, which is across town from where I worked before. I had this kind of interesting opportunity to help set up a publishing program for STEM education at ARM in their research department. So that was cool. I did that for 2.5 years, and then not quite a year ago, I moved over to the technical communications department, which is part of a bigger group called Sales and Partner Enablement. So I'm now the editor responsible for technical communications, not really marketing, but technical communications. And then 2 weeks into my job, I was told that now I got to be also in charge of guidelines and terminology for Acrolinx, which I wasn't expecting at all. It's because someone left. So it's been a really steep learning curve, and I have to just, at the very beginning, give a shout out to the guys at Acrolinx who gave me and my colleague back in Cambridge really fantastic support at the beginning and continuing. So what we'll talk about today, I'll tell you a little bit about ARM, which is one of the biggest companies you've probably never heard of, unless you've been to this conference before, because I know we've sent people to this conference before. Technical content at ARM and how it's evolved, Acrolinx at ARM, and then the kind of content journey, and then how Acrolinx and ARM are better working together. I have some notes just so I don't miss anything. There are a few lists and things, but don't get nervous. So introduction to ARM. ARM was founded in 1990, so the notes that I had said 25 years ago, but actually it's now 29 years ago, in a converted barn in a village just outside Cambridge. It was about a dozen engineers, and they started out designing what computer chips. It was a joint venture between Acorn and Apple. Basically, their big lucky break was designing the computer chips that went into the very beginning, the very early mobile phones, and then smartphones after that. Now today, here's some of my numbers. So 29 years ago, 12 people in a barn. Now it's 7,511 people, 52 offices, 202 departments. The offices are all over the world, well, most continents. And 37% of ARM staff are still in Cambridge. So it really is truly a global company. So another number, everyone at ARM loves this slide. I have reservations, but anyway, the point of the slide is that 70% of the world uses ARM. I don't think kids should be on a beach using screens, but anyway. I didn't say that. You can edit that out of the video. 70% of the world uses ARM technology. It's in 95% of smartphones, it's in wearable devices, medical devices, it's in the space station, it's in, with cars having so many computer components in them now, it's, if you've got a really new car, it's probably got an ARM design chip in it. So it's a partnership-based culture, and it's a very collaborative ecosystem. But what does that really mean? So ARM is the global leader in the development of licensable technology. Basically, ARM designs computer chips. ARM doesn't make anything. ARM designs computer chips, and then they license those chips to manufacturers who then make things and sell them, and you use them. Oh, wait, I need to go back because the numbers, the 138 billion plus ARM-based chips shipped to date. So I've been at ARM since early 2016, and I can remember when it passed 100 billion. So that just shows you how ARM is still really, really growing. More than 500 licensees, and yeah, some other really big numbers. So the way the business model works, like I said, ARM doesn't make anything. ARM designs computer chips, and then ARM signs license agreements with partners, and from really, really big companies to really, really small companies, even individuals. And once the license agreement's in place, there's a license fee, and then the semiconductor company goes and makes something, has it manufactured, shipped, put into stores, sold, and then a royalty comes back to ARM. And it's, so you have sort of this continuous cycle of development. And ARM works really closely with partners at all levels, and that's one of the things I'm going to talk about when we talk about content, is how ARM works with partners of all sizes and all levels, and we have to make sure that our content is useful for all of them. So yeah, lots and lots of technical content to serve all these needs. So technical content at ARM, we have just over 70 technical writers. Depends how you define technical writer, around 70. It's not a giant number. I don't know if other people in the room work at companies that have that many technical writers. I'd be interested to know. Yeah, one person saying yes. Okay. 450 plus content curators. Now these are people who have access to systems that allow them to create and host on the technical content website, which is called ARM Developer Content. ARM has more than 3,500 products, and because there's 7,511 employees, there are more than 7,500 potential content creators. And so in Andrew's talk, he used this phrase, the content chaos problem. And I wrote it down because ARM likes the fact that everyone is a potential content creator. And yeah, maybe it's a little chaotic, but basically, if you go back to the barn and the dozen engineers, the reason ARM was so successful is because everybody was doing stuff. So the challenge is to keep that, in a really big company, keep that spirit of innovation and anybody can do anything, and yet corral it. So I wrote down some words. I think instead of content chaos, I might have said cornucopia, melange, stew, a gumbo, I don't know. But it's a kind of a whole mix of potential content and potential content creators. So I think that's everything I wanted to say about that. Oh yeah, so we've got diverse set of content creators and products. We've also got a really broad tool set, and this is where I wrote down a list. I did this on the plane this morning. So for content tools, it's interesting to see Uta's list in the previous talk. We have Data CMS, Acrolinx, Adobe Acrobat, FrameMaker, Microsoft Word, Go Compare, and Annotate. And those are the ones I could think of on the plane this morning. We have business process apps. We have Janus, Confluence, Jira, SAP, SharePoint, other ones graphics tools, we have several of those, Visio, Snagit, a couple others. Version control tools, we have Git, we have SVN. So it's a big tool set. And we're always working on processes to standardize our content creation practices. So yeah, okay, here. So content evolution. Like I said a couple slides ago, what we want to do is make sure that everybody at ARM feels like they can be an innovator, a content creator. In August of 2017, so a year and a bit after I joined ARM, ARM went from this logo with the 3 capital letters to this logo that looks much more kind of modern with the lowercase letters. And to me, that was kind of a watershed moment, and that kind of symbolizes how ARM's journey, and therefore its content journey, has been evolving. So if you think about sort of the classic types of technical reference manuals and things like that, ARM's moving away from that. And one way that we're going to embrace this kind of new, more outward-looking, it's a B2B company, but it also deals with companies and even individuals on their projects. So we decided, and this was one thing I really noticed when I joined, ARM desperately needed a new writing guide. The writing guide was really out of date. I'll just put it that way. So we've come up with a new technical writing guide that I just, in the last break, messaged someone back in Cambridge and said, please close the review. So the review of that writing guide is now closed, and I'm going to start building it next week, hopefully. The tone is less formal. We've come up with sort of what we call the ARM technical content voice, which echoes a little bit what they were talking about in the previous presentation. So it's not the voice of your best mate, but it's also not the voice of sort of stuffy academic or dry as burnt toast. It's sort of a trusted colleague who understands what you need to know and knows how to explain it to you in really clear terms. We're looking at things like accessibility. We did some research when I very first joined last summer, and we had some stats that I'm not going to go into. I didn't put them in the presentation, but basically people whose first language isn't English didn't understand a lot of our content. So we've done a lot of work in the new writing guide around making that, addressing that problem. And yeah, Acrolinx will help us get there. I think that was everything. Yeah, oh yes, I wanted to say in the new writing guide, some of the new sections that we put in just to kind of illustrate the things that we're thinking about. How to write good technical content that wasn't included before. There were a lot of things like don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. How to write technical content for SEO, the ARM technical content voice. We put in stuff about IP, so there wasn't really much information about correct use of trademarks and copyright symbols and when to think about third-party usage and things like that. We put in a bunch of language and grammar new sections that weren't there before, so explaining active voice and passive voice, explaining when mostly you shouldn't use contractions. We talked about phrasal verbs. I did a straw poll in the office where I sit, which is about 12 people, a mix of probably 2/3 native English speakers and about 1/3 non-native English speakers. And I said, who knows what a phrasal verb is? Who knows what a phrasal verb is here? A few people, yeah. Okay, so phrasal verb is basically a multi-word verb, like look up. Doesn't mean look up, it means, well, it can, but it can mean, look up in a dictionary. That's a phrasal verb. And that's something that really confuses non-native speakers. And so we put in a section about that so that our technical writers and content creators will be aware of it, because I think a lot of native speakers they were like, oh, yeah, I see what you mean. We put in stuff about possessives and how they can be confusing, simpler sentence structure, simpler words and phrases, information about how to write about, and we're doing a companion guide about how to use graphics and videos, and then how to write about and format code, because there's a lot of code in some of our content, and there are good and bad ways to present code and talk about it and display it, more and less confusing. So Acrolinx is part of that journey. So we started using Acrolinx, our author started using Acrolinx in 2015. And again, it would be interesting to talk to other people, not now necessarily, but maybe later on, tomorrow, this evening. We've got about 2,500 ARM-specific terms, about 100 guidelines, 40 domains, which I think is a lot, but anyway, I didn't set it up. We did 44,000 searches in the last 12 months. And we've got 15 terminologists. Now, I didn't know if terminologist was like an Acrolinx word or if this was a word that someone in ARM before my time made up. So it's a group of people that are across the sort of 6 main areas that ARM works in. So architecture, so how the chip is architected, the processors that use the architecture. We have a systems group that kind of work on how things connect to each other. We have a group called physical design, and that's kind of how the silicon is actually assembled, software, and then we have one that's called media machine learning. So my terminologists come from all those different groups, and then we have a few platform guys on there too, just to help with questions that come up along that. And we work, we have a JIRA queue, so if anyone in the business finds a term that they think should be in or that they think is incorrectly being applied, then they can raise a ticket, and then we have fortnightly meetings and we assign tickets and we go through the queue, and that's how we manage this vast amount of information, and it works pretty well. What I want to talk about now that we've put ARM and Acrolinx together, is how the content journey used to work, how it works now, and how we hope it's going to work in the future. So I don't know if you can see, but because those boxes are all green, outlined in green, that means that they're manual. So what you have on the right is one of our technical reference manuals, which is probably 300 or 400 pages long. And the way the journey used to work was we produced only things like technical reference manuals, and there's something called the ARM, which is the ARM Architecture Reference Manual, and that's about 6,000 pages long. An engineering specification would come in, it would go into DITA, the technical writers would work on it, and then it would be generated into the output that you see there. Now that we've gone from all caps ARM to modern ARM, we have, as part of that evolution, we've now got content coming from all kinds of different places. So we've got the DITA XML content that you can see at the top there, which is the kind of classic document types. We've got people working in Markdown and RST. That's mostly the software guys. We've got people working in JSON, Microsoft Word, all kinds of things. All those things go into XML. Then we have an editorial process that includes Acrolinx, we hope. And then the output's generated, and then it's manually uploaded to the website. So it's still, apart from a few things where you can see the JSON auto-generation, it's still mostly manual. So we do end up, our consistency isn't as good as we would like because it's possible. I could write a blog in a Word document, upload it to our community, don't have to check it on Acrolinx. I do because I'm good. Some people do because they're good. Some people don't because they don't know about it, they don't know how to use it, they don't have access to it, all kinds of reasons because there's so many of us. So it's there, and a lot of people use it, but the use could be wider. So, which leads us to the future content journey, where, see all those blue boxes? All these things would be automated. So everything would be automatically fed into the XML, and then Acrolinx and Schematron. This is not my area, this technical stuff, so if you ask me questions about this, I'll probably just say I don't know and put you in touch with someone who does. Exactly how the nuts and bolts of this work. So the content will be rendered into XML for consistency of processing, which makes sense. Then it gets validated, and if it gets a high enough Acrolinx score and the structure is valid, we have a content models project that's also running in parallel to the writing guide project. And then the output will be generated in HTML and PDF directly to the website. So this is the vision. This is where we'd like to get. And that will help us, if so much of this is automated, then we can focus on the really high value stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where we're hoping to get to. And you can see different types of content now. We're now producing blogs, knowledge-based articles, app notes, integration manuals, all sorts of different, learning content is another big thing we've been doing. We've been moving from support engineers who take support cases and then email people back when they have their problems or speak to them on the phone. And we're trying to get people to do more sort of self-service just because it's more scalable. And so there's a big push that started not too many months before I joined the group that I've been really involved in, which is creating enabling content, so tutorials, how-to guides, things like that. So that's a whole new content type, and Acrolinx has been really useful in helping us in the team, the content services team, work on that content, but also showing the authors, they're mostly support engineers, how to improve their content. And you know, I've heard this phrase a couple times, the big brother problem. I don't really think we have much of that. I think that, if anything, people aren't as aware of Acrolinx as they could be. We do look at it for purposes of KPIs, but I don't think that we have too much of a big brother problem, which is good. So what's next? Yeah, Acrolinx and ARM. You know, ARM works better having a relationship with Acrolinx. And there were three main points I wanted to make here. Having Acrolinx as part of our verification criteria means that our content is better. The Acrolinx will be applied more consistently to more of our content. We really value our support relationship with Acrolinx. We have health checks, status calls, updates. We use the portal to raise questions. There are people in the room who've answered questions for me, so thank you. Some of them feel like really dumb questions, but I just think that's okay. I'm just going to ask it. And my terminologist. So when I took on the group, it had been sort of static for a long time, but I've revamped it and tried to get people who have some energy and enthusiasm and are interested in really spreading the word and evangelizing. And then one of the things I'm going to be doing in the next few months, and I was excited to see on the program some references to how to get your authors, how to buy in and to train them. The idea is that the terminologists, the group of 15 or so, they train people in their areas and they evangelize and they say how great it is and how easy it is to use and all that. So, which kind of brings me to where we are in our journey. It's ongoing. I don't think it's ever going to have sort of a finishing point. We're never going to have a 100% score on all of our content. We're never going to have all of our content automated. Things are always going to be happening. But it's exciting. It's a big sort of dynamic company. to be working with, ARM is. And no matter how much automation you have, I'll just finish with, I think unless you have people who are creating the content or who are responsible for maintaining the content, who really care about making it the best content that it can be, you're not going to succeed. So I think that working hand in hand with the processes and the people, I think, is really the way to go. So that's it. Any questions?
Thanks a lot, Melissa Good.
You're very welcome.